It's been 3 months of pain and agony. I just want to say thank you, Lord. Thank you. Justice, please. I just want justice. I don't want to fight with nobody. I don't want to argue with nobody. I just want justice for my daughter. And I want peace in my family. This has been such a hard 3 months. It's been painful. It's been we've been torn apart. One of the leaders of our family, she was the baby, but she was the leader. The holidays are not holidays. I'm just grateful to God. And I am happy on today's verdict. I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. And all I want is to be done, is justice to be done. I want justice so I can have a peace and mind. It won't bring her back, but it will be a little peace now. It feel like a big bundle just been lifted off my head and my heart.
Carlos is doing great. He has always been doing great. He has a strong mother. He has a strong grandmother. He has strong aunties. He has strong uncles. He has a village. Carlos may be hurt for the rest of his life, but we make sure he see rainbows in his clouds. Okay? Nothing will ever change about that. There is nothing he needs that we cannot provide. He is perfectly well. He is happy. He is thriving. And even when he feels his lowest, we pull him out of it together like we do with each other.
Welcome to Crime Scene Chronicles, where we just don't follow the crime. We explore the mind behind it. Subscribe and stay with us, because some truths are hidden deeper than you think.
There's a moment in a Chicago courtroom, caught on video and shared thousands of times, where a man stands in a hallway outside a hearing and says, directly to a camera, "I'm just tired of the lies." He's talking about allegations that he held the mother of his son in a headlock, while another woman, also the mother of his child, shot her in the face. He denies it. He says he was trying to stop the fight, not cause it. And more than a year after Romeca Meeks Blackman died on a Chicago sidewalk, that denial, and the question of whether it's true, remains one of the most contested, most legally consequential open questions in this entire case. Tonight, we're going to talk specifically about Carlos Smith, the man connected to both the victim and the woman charged with killing her. What's actually been alleged against him in court, what he's said in response, and why, more than a year later, he still hasn't been charged with anything. We're not going to tell you he's guilty, we're not going to tell you he's innocent. We're going to tell you exactly what's on the record, and exactly why the answer to this specific question matters so much to how the rest of this case gets resolved. If this is your first time with us, welcome to Criminal Conscience True Crime, where we follow real, unresolved cases carefully, because the people connected to them, all of them, including the ones who haven't been charged, deserve to have their story told accurately. If that's what you're here for, hit like, subscribe to Criminal Conscience True Crime, and turn on notifications, because this case is still active, and there's more to come. Let's start with what actually happened on the morning of September 8, 2025, because everything about Carlos Smith's role in this case flows from those few minutes. Just before 8:30 that morning, Romeca Meeks Blackman dropped her 6-year-old son off at school near Cermak Road and State Street in Chicago's South Loop. An ordinary handoff, the kind every working parent makes without a second thought. Shortly after, according to prosecutors, she became involved in a physical altercation with Quadaja Johnson, who goes by Holly. Johnson and Smith share a young child together. Smith is also the father of Romeca's 6-year-old son, meaning 3 lives, 2 women and 1 man, were connected through the same set of relationships that morning, in the exact place where all 3 of them happened to intersect. According to prosecutors, after that initial altercation, Johnson walked back to her own vehicle, retrieved a handgun, returned, and fired multiple shots, one of which struck Romeca in the face. Romeca was rushed to Stroger Hospital, where she later died. Johnson was taken into custody at the scene, but not immediately charged. a gap that lasted nearly 3 months and became its own source of public frustration, which we've covered in earlier videos on this case. On December 4, 2025, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office formally charged her with first-degree murder, later adding 5 additional counts in January 2026. Now here's where Carlos Smith enters the legal picture specifically, and where the actual documented allegations against him begin. According to reporting confirmed through multiple outlets, prosecutors have alleged that Smith fist-bumped Johnson in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, a gesture, if proven, that would be difficult to reconcile with any account of him as a bystander who simply happened to be present. Separately, prosecutors have alleged that Smith physically assaulted Romeca in the moments leading up to the shooting, allegations that, according to court reporting, include a claim that he slammed a car door into her and held her in a physical restraint before Johnson fired. Smith has denied all of it, on the record, in court. Speaking directly to reporters outside a hearing, he said, "I'm just tired of the lies and everything, of what they said I did. I know for a fact it wasn't true. I didn't headlock it. I didn't beat her." He's maintained that his role that morning was the opposite of what's been alleged, that he was trying to defuse the situation, not escalate it. So here's where this case actually stands, legally, on that specific question. Prosecutors have made allegations against Carlos Smith in court filings and hearings. He has denied those allegations directly and publicly, and as of the most recent reporting, he has not been charged with any crime in connection with Romeca's death. All three of those things are true at the same time, and it's important to hold them together rather than collapsing them into a simpler story than the one the record actually supports. It's worth taking a moment to explain why a case can sit in exactly this kind of suspended state. Allegations on the record, a denial on the record, and no charges, because it's a genuinely confusing legal position for the public to sit with, especially in a case this emotionally charged. Under Illinois law, a person can be held criminally accountable for another person's conduct if prosecutors can prove that person intentionally aided, abetted, or otherwise participated in planning or committing the offense, a legal concept generally referred to as accountability. It's the legal mechanism that would allow someone who didn't personally pull a trigger to still be charged in connection with a killing, if prosecutors can show they knowingly assisted or facilitated it. That's a meaningfully higher bar than simply being present at the scene, or even being alleged to have engaged in a separate physical altercation moments before a shooting. Presence, even alleged involvement in an entirely different physical confrontation, doesn't automatically establish the kind of intentional participation in the killing itself that an accountability charge would require. Prosecutors would need evidence connecting Smith's actions specifically to Johnson's decision to retrieve a weapon and fire it, not just evidence that he was involved in some other part of that morning's events. That distinction is almost certainly why, more than a year after Romeca's death, Smith remains uncharged while Johnson faces 6 felony counts. It doesn't mean prosecutors have ruled out ever charging him. It means that as of now, whatever evidence exists hasn't cleared the specific legal threshold required to bring accountability charges, or prosecutors are still actively evaluating whether it does. Public commentary that treats this gap as proof of a cover-up, or proves that Smith is somehow protected by unnamed forces, isn't grounded in anything we can actually verify. It's speculation dressed up as insight, and we're not going to present it as more than that. What we can say, because it's part of the actual public record, is that the relationship between Smith and Romeca's family has been visibly, publicly strained throughout this case. A December 2025 court hearing reportedly saw real tension escalate outside the courtroom between Smith and members of Romeca's family, and video of that confrontation circulated widely online. That tension is understandable on a human level, regardless of what's ultimately proven in court. Smith is a man who, by his own account, and by the allegations against him, was present for the final violent moments of the mother of his son's life, and who is now facing serious accusations from prosecutors that he was more than a bystander. Whatever the legal truth turns out to be, it's not hard to understand why that combination of facts has made him a lightning rod in this case, or why Romeca's family has struggled to see him as anything other than a central figure in what happened to her. It's also worth being direct about something that matters here. None of this means Smith did what he's been accused of. Allegations made by prosecutors in a court filing are exactly that. Allegations, part of a case the state is still building, not findings of fact. He's entitled to have those allegations tested, challenged, and either proven or disproven through the actual legal process, the same as anyone else. A public denial, delivered directly and specifically, the way his was, is also part of the record, and deserves to be weighed as part of a full picture, rather than dismissed, simply because it's convenient to a narrative that's already been decided online. Now let's talk about Johnson's own legal position, because it connects directly to why the allegations against Smith matter so much to how this case could ultimately be resolved. Johnson's defense has consistently rested on a claim of self-defense, that she felt her life and the life of her child was in danger, and that she acted to protect herself. Her attorney, Ari Williams, has argued in court that evidence including 911 recordings and surveillance footage complicates the state's version of events, and has pushed, so far unsuccessfully at points and successfully at others, for her release while the case moves toward trial. Prosecutors have pushed back hard on the self-defense framing, specifically because of the sequence of events they say the evidence shows. That, after an initial altercation, Johnson walked away, retrieved a firearm from her own vehicle, and then returned before firing. A sequence that legally looks very different from an uninterrupted, immediate response to an ongoing physical threat. Here's where Smith's alleged conduct becomes legally significant beyond just his own potential exposure. If the physical altercation Johnson describes as the basis for her fear actually involved Smith restraining Romeca, rather than Romeca posing an active threat to Johnson herself, that reshapes the entire picture of what was actually happening in the moments before the shooting, and it cuts in a genuinely complicated direction. It doesn't simply exonerate Johnson, but it also doesn't necessarily support the state's most straightforward theory of a woman who walked to her car, armed herself, and returned to commit a premeditated killing. It suggests a scene that may have involved three people acting simultaneously, in ways that none of the existing public accounts have fully reconciled with each other yet. That's genuinely one of the more legally complex aspects of this case, and it's part of why, more than a year after Romeca's death, it still hasn't gone to trial. The timeline of who did what, in what order, in those final moments before the shooting, isn't fully settled in the public record, and it may not be fully resolved until testimony and evidence are actually presented and tested in a courtroom. As of the most recent updates in this case, Johnson has moved between different pretrial statuses. She was initially denied release and held at the Cook County Jail, and has since, at a later hearing, been granted pretrial release under strict conditions: 24-hour electronic monitoring, surrender of her passport, surrender of her firearm owner's identification card, and a prohibition against leaving the state of Illinois. That shift reflects the ordinary, sometimes frustrating way pretrial proceedings unfold over many months in a serious case. Arguments made, evidence reviewed, conditions revisited. Not a sudden collapse or strengthening of either side's position on any single day. We want to pause here and say something plainly, because it's easy for coverage of a case like this one to drift toward treating every procedural update as a dramatic revelation. It isn't. Court cases involving serious charges move slowly, deliberately, and often frustratingly, by design, because the stakes of getting it wrong in either direction are permanent. A hearing that doesn't produce an arrest or a dramatic reveal isn't a disappointment or a sign that something is being hidden. It's usually just what a functioning legal process actually looks like from the outside, which is often far less cinematic than true crime commentary tends to make it sound. There's a broader pattern worth naming honestly here, because this case has become a genuine magnet for it. Online commentary that treats uncharged, private individuals as though they've already been convicted, based on inference, speculation, and theories about hidden conspiracies that haven't been supported by anything on the actual record. Carlos Smith has not been charged with a crime. Whatever the eventual outcome of this case, he is entitled to the same presumption that applies to anyone facing serious public accusation without formal charges: that allegations are not the same as proof, and that a denial given directly, publicly, and consistently deserves to be weighed rather than dismissed. That standard matters, regardless of how any of us feels about the broader tragedy of this case, and regardless of how satisfying a simpler, more villain-shaped version of this story might feel to consume. What we can say with real confidence, without relying on speculation about any individual's guilt, is this. A mother of 5 is dead. A 6-year-old boy no longer has his mother, and by some accounts, may be growing up in the middle of an ongoing, painful conflict between the adults who remain in his life. 2 women who were both connected to the same man ended up in a confrontation that neither of them, by any account, was able to de-escalate before it turned fatal. And more than a year later, the full, legally established truth of exactly what happened in those final minutes, who did what, in what order, and why, still hasn't been fully delivered by a court, because that's not how the legal process works, however much any of us might wish it moved faster. Romeca's family has continued to show up, publicly and consistently, at every hearing in this case, wearing pink in her memory, asking for accountability, asking that everyone connected to what happened to her actually face a judge. That's not an unreasonable thing to want. It's also not something that can be delivered on anyone's timeline, except the one the legal system actually runs on, however unsatisfying that is for a family that has already waited far too long for basic answers. Before we close, it's worth remembering exactly who this case is actually about. Romeca Meeks Blackman was 31 years old. She was a mother, working toward a nursing degree so she could build a stable, independent future for her children. Friends have described her as joyful, full of energy, someone who filled her days with the ordinary, exhausting, rewarding work of raising her son. On an ordinary Monday morning, she did the single most ordinary thing a parent can do. She dropped her son off at school and told him to have a good day, and within minutes, her life was over. Whatever the courtroom ultimately determines about every person connected to that morning, that loss is permanent, and it deserves to remain the actual center of this story, not a footnote to an increasingly complicated legal proceeding. If you've made it this far, we'd like to hear from you, grounded specifically in what we've actually laid out tonight, not speculation. Do you think the legal standard for charging someone with accountability in a case like this one is set at the right level? Let us know in the comments respectfully, because real people on every side of this case are affected by how it's discussed. If you want to follow this case as it continues to develop, because it is still active, and there will be real updates as it moves toward trial, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Criminal Conscience True Crime, and turn on notifications, so you'll hear the moment there's something genuinely new and confirmed to report. We follow cases like this one because families like Romeca's deserve to have her story told accurately, long after the initial headlines fade, and the online noise moves on to the next thing. This has been Criminal Conscience True Crime. We'll be back with more, as soon as there's more of the actual truth to tell.